Hello and welcome to the Brass Junkies. I'm your host, Andrew Hitz, and I am joined by a former guest and a new co-host, bass trombonist extraordinaire, Jennifer Wharton. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm fantastic.
That was very
I get
Broadway.
to talk to you. It's incredible.
Yeah,
well,
right?
you know.
Yeah, you got to talk to me and your soulmate. So that's that's one hell of an afternoon, if I may say so myself.
It's we usually don't talk, so this was fun.
That's why she and today's guest, her husband, John Fedchock, get along so well, is that they rarely speak, even though they live together in the same house in Queens. So this was, I said this towards the end of the episode, but I was like, John has been on the list for a long time. He's a legend who happens to just still be doing his thing, and he's in his fourth decade of being a jazz trombone and arranging and teaching legend. And I was like, all right, finally got to get John. And then I was like, Jennifer needs to be.
Thank God Lance left.
Yeah, right. I was just waiting. Yeah, because I didn't want to waste a good guest like John on Lance. The two of you have something really special. It's like, yeah, your chemistry is just awesome.
I'm pretty lucky.
Yeah, well, so is he. That's how the good relationships work, is that both people feel like they're lucky. So, and he's just a gem. My goodness. He's awesome.
He really is, and it's very easy to forget how amazing he is at what he does. So, I don't get to hear him perform a lot because he leaves town, but when I get to hear him perform, I remember why I love him as a musician, I'm also just a fan of his, outside of him being my favorite husband.
I obviously don't have anybody on the show who I'm not a fan of artistically. That's the beautiful thing about having a platform like this. But he's phenomenal. I mean, yeah, just really, really special. If you don't know any of his, just go and just fire up YouTube, watch any video of him before you get into the interview. You'll be happy that you did. And you'll be also happy to know that Parker Mouthpieces provided the hosting for the Brass Junkies. Thank you to them. Parker Mouthpieces offers fine customizable component mouthpieces for horn, trombone, euphonium, and tuba, including the Andrew Hitz Artist Model Tuba Mouthpiece. You can find out more at parkermouthpieces.com or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Real quickly, you just started a show. Tell us about it.
Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. It is starring Josh Groban and Annalie Ashford, and the coolest part about it, the unsung hero, is the music, right? Stephen Sondheim. Mm-hmm. But they're doing it, the original orchestration, 26-piece orchestra. That just doesn't happen on Broadway anymore. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah, so 26 of us are packed into that pit at the Lunt Fontanne Theater on 46th and Broadway, so please come see us. I think we'll be there for a minute.
That's great. I had no idea that it was that big of a pit. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
huge.
The name of the game is just everywhere is downsize, downsize, downsize. Like how little can we get away with having? That's really encouraging. So, I hope that you have a long and fruitful run with that musical, and it's so great to be able to align your schedule and your busy, I almost said wife, your husband's schedule. And my schedule.
My man wife.
Yes, your man wife. So thank you. And you were awesome as a co-host. You're all about to hear it. You're all about to hear it. It's not just that she obviously knows him well, but just like the questions that you asked, it was perfect. So you're the best.
And I don't think I embarrassed him. So I think I was excited. I'll find out.
Yeah. As soon as we hang up. Yeah. He might be right outside the door. Anyway, without further ado, let us get to the conversation that we had with jazz trombone legend John Fedchock. And today on the Brass Junkies, I am joined by one of my favorite jazz trombonists of all time. And I'm not exaggerating. His name is John Fedchock. John, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks.
He's like, ask me again 10 minutes into this interview and
exactly,
I can maybe,
Exactly. Well, I mean, just so everybody knows, we're recording this at noon. I'm not a morning person, so we're officially just 1 minute out of morning. So it'll get better.
See, now I want to have you back and do 8 a.m. just to see it, just to experience
No, you don't.
it. No.
I had to go in there around 10 o'clock, and I said, "You have to be a human in 2 hours."
I guess it would be bad if you're a jazz musician and you were like a real morning person and then like couldn't stand the night. That would be bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the earliest gig you've ever had?
Well, I mean, if you count like traveling overseas with the time changes, it's getting off a plane and playing, someplace that, would normally be like 4 in the morning or something here.
Right.
So it varies. But I just did 2 weeks traveling in the Midwest, and it was a pretty full schedule. Some days had early morning starts because it was like clinics. Some nights had late night starts because they were clubs. And many of the days had long drives. And some of the days had all three. So by the time I got home, I was wiped out. I'm still catching up.
Yeah, I remember specifically talking to you. There was a 7 a.m. jazz band.
Yes. Yeah. So that's a little rough. Bands meeting at 7 a.m., which means you got to get up at, between 4 and 5 to drive to the school and meet the band director and talk to them and be like a normal person. So I need a couple
normal
hours
human person.
because I need a couple hours of drinking coffee before I can, relate with anybody. Yeah.
I am now a father, and my 8-year-old is like he like wakes up and he's just like ready to go, and he like in like an endearing way, he's just oblivious. He just like expects everybody else to just kind of like, like if you were Uncle John, he'd be like, "Let's go!" Like what, and you'd be like, "I need 2 hours." He's like, "What do you like? Let's play Uno. Let's play Monopoly. Let's play, like yeah, let's wrestle." And it's like, dude,
I live with someone like that.
oh.
I don't know who he's talking about.
And she's trained the dogs to be the same way. So, yeah.
Oh, but there's nothing like John can tell you. There's nothing like being woken up by a dog. That's pretty good.
Well, that's
I mean,
true,
I'm sure being woken up by a kid, especially if it's yours, is good. But John, tell him what the little one does to you in the morning.
She jumps on my chest and stands there like she is at the top of the mountain claiming her space. For no reason. That's the only time she does it, is in the morning. If I'm taking a nap in the afternoon, if I'm whatever, only in the morning.
That reminds me of a famous dog joke where the punchline is because it can. Yeah, I think that's I think that's why she does that.
And that I'm not going to say the joke, but that's one of the reasons you have to be concerned when they do lick your face in the morning.
So do you think your dog knows that you're a really big deal in the jazz world, or are you just the bozo that buys the food?
Actually, almost everybody that comes over here, are trombone players. So our dog just assumes everybody plays trombone.
It's funny though, when we get a dog, we have to introduce it to the trombone very early on, because I grew up with dogs that were afraid of instruments. So, I mean, to be fair, the dog, when I start practicing, does run downstairs to John, so we know who she likes.
The little dog does not like the bass trombone. For some reason. She's fine if I'm playing down here, no problem. But the bass trombone, she'll hightail it out.
That's really interesting. Yeah, people who are parents like to claim that like no one could possibly understand if you're not a parent, but owning a pet is incredibly similar to being a parent. And the day that we brought Nicholas home from the hospital, first two things that I did when he came in was I played tuba and I ran my coffee grinder. Like just like right away, I was like, these are normal sounds. You are safe. You are going to hear them all the time, and we're going to have a problem if you're not okay with it. So, yep. So John, you joined the Woody Herman Orchestra in 1980. So you were either 22 or 23, depending on
22.
Yeah. And so how did you get that gig that early?
I first heard the band play when I was like a junior in high school. And they came to my school and played a concert and did a clinic.
Where was that?
Mayfield High School in Mayfield, Ohio. Okay. I grew up in a neighboring suburb called Highland Heights, but I went to Mayfield High School, which is on the east east suburbs of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And fun fact, Mayfield, Ohio is the setting for Leave It to Beaver.
Ah.
So you get an idea of what I grew up in. Yeah.
Real swinging town.
Not real diverse.
Isn't Cleveland also the setting for A Christmas Story?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the band came to my school and did a concert in a clinic, and that was the initial spark for. I was kind of dabbling in listening to jazz, but it was all old big band records that one of my uncles gave to me when I started playing trombone. He gave me some Tommy Dorsey records and things, and but when Woody's band came through, I thought it was going to be all these old guys playing all these old songs, but it was guys in their 20s playing modern music in addition to the old things. So that was a great band to first hear. And Jim Pugh was the trombonist, and he had like, I don't know, 6, 8 solos over the course of the concert. And it's just like, wow, this is something I might be able to do, or I'd love to do. But I knew I had a lot of work ahead of myself. So I went to Ohio State and studied music ed to be a band director. But my second year, they started a jazz degree, and I started taking those courses. And I had taken one jazz course when I was in high school at a neighboring community college. So I had a little foundation, and I just met up with, I had some friends that lived in Columbus, and they knew where all the clubs were to go sit in and meet people, and that kind of got me going too. But I almost got dropped from the music program at the end of my first year at Ohio State.
It's my favorite story.
Yeah, I was behind when I auditioned for the music school. I'd studied with like a commercial player from age 9 to 18, but 17. My last year in high school, he stopped teaching for a short period of time, and I took lessons from this other teacher. And he said, "Well, for your audition, you should maybe play an etude." And I didn't know what an etude was. That's kind of where I was. So I got there, I was way behind in that stuff. And so at the end of my first year, the jury, they didn't want to have me continue on as a music ed major even.
Wow.
But my teacher stuck up for me, and that's when I really started playing like 5-6 hours a day and really diving deeply into it. And then I thought, well, okay, if I'm getting good enough, maybe I can get good enough to get into Eastman School of Music, which is where all the trombone players during that era were coming from on Woody's band. Jim Pugh, Birch Johnson, Jim Daniels, all these really great players. So that was my short-term goal. See if I can get into Eastman. Whatever it is there is getting people on the road. So that's kind of what I did. I studied with John Marcellus there. And after 1 year, I met people that knew people that were out there doing it. And, I went to go hear Woody's band one night, and I gave a recording of myself to the lead trombone player at the time. And a couple months later, they called me.
Can you imagine, like, that doesn't happen anymore? You can't just walk up to a hero of yours and hand them, a CD or, your Spotify playlist. You can't do that. I mean, people email it around, but it's
I always tell students they should always have some kind of audio resume, whether it's online or a CD or something that puts you in your best light.
Yes.
And when I was an undergrad, that's what I was doing, undergrad and grad school. Every time I played something that I liked, I'd get a copy of the recording from the concert, and I had kind of a collection of things like fade in, fade out, just my solos basically. Just because I'm very hard on myself. So if I was feeling bad about how I was playing, I could listen to it and say, okay, you're not as bad as you think you are. And so that was the tape that I gave the player, Gene Smith, on Woody's band. And when the second chair opened up, he called me.
Wow. I want to rewind just a second, just to reiterate the fact that the powers that be at Ohio State were like, this guy is not worthy of continuing as a music ed major, which and that's not, I'm not in any way putting down music ed. It's just like there are and should be different levels of of proficiency. Sure. And I think if you can't teach yourself how to play your own instrument, it's going to be really hard to teach a whole bunch of kids different instruments. So I think it's really important, but music ed, it's like that's pretty drastic, and that lit a fire under you.
Yeah, and the other thing was I didn't really know about what a jury was, you know.
Right.
So I went to go play my jury in like a pair of overalls and flannel shirt, right? And then people in there with ties and stuff. I didn't know.
Was it was it a
Do you-
nice flannel shirt?
Yeah.
What's that?
Do you still have it?
No, I don't. I don't.
Wait, can I interject and
Please.
please tell the audience about the suit, John.
The suit? Well,
The suit.
I wore a suit for my junior recital, which I am told was one of the, this is to quote some people, one of the best classical trombone recitals played at Ohio State. This was confirmed by just recently by a fellow classmate. Anyway, I wore a powder blue three-piece suit
Yeah.
in the style of
Polyester.
1978. Yeah, of course, everything was polyester in 1978. Anyway, I had the suit in my closet, and every time I moved, I just moved all my clothes. So when I met Jen, it was still in my closet. And I put it on, and it still fit. But when we moved to this house, I gave it to the Goodwill, which I regret now.
Oh.
Well, I'm sure there's some tall motherfucker out there, with a very good Halloween costume.
Yeah, he might be out on 8th Avenue with a gang of girls.
Now it was not polyester because this was 1988, but the first time that I met Sam Palafian, he was wearing a powder blue suit with Empire playing at Tanglewood. So yeah, it was yeah, it would the color and the material would have made a very pretty Easter
Pastels
dress.
were big in the
yeah,
70s. Yeah.
They do say blue is very soothing.
So soothing that your wife made you get rid of it. Doesn't sound so soothed to me, but I'm not here to judge. I'm just trying to steer an interview. I'm hearing a lot of for a young person. I'm hearing a lot of self-awareness, and I'm hearing a lot of initiative taking. There's a word for that I'm not coming up with, but just self-propelled. Like, I mean, even just making highlights with like fade in and fade out, which was not really, really hard back then, but it was hard enough that it was easier to not do it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm not sure why. I guess it was more for me just confirming that I was not as bad as I was thinking I was, so each time I did something, I would. But yeah, I try to tell students all the time that, whatever it is that got you in music, don't let that fire burn out. That should be like your guiding light, and everything you do should be based. It doesn't have to be right on point, but always keep that kind of online. So because you don't want to end up doing something you don't like doing.
Wow. See, Jennifer warned me that you're not that profound, but I thought that was quite profound personally.
No, I think it's interesting though, because you and I was telling him this before we got on the call, but you are so driven. Maybe that was the word you were looking for, is driven. Even when you don't want to do it, and even when you don't feel like anything will come of it, you still drive yourself to put yourself out there and get gigs. Like, sure, you're human like we all are, but you still do it. And it's something, as a musician, as a trombonist, I really admire about you, is that I watch how hard you work, and I watch how many hours you put into your craft, not just the playing, but the actual business end of it. And it's really admirable. And I don't think enough people know about that side. Yeah, sure, they might take a music and business class, but they're not seeing what it actually takes. Can you talk about just how you get gigs? I mean, I'm going through it right now and I hate it, but because I have you as an example, I keep at it,
Well, over time, now I have a lot of contacts everywhere, but at the time I didn't. I mean, I think the first time I left New York to do some kind of thing like that, performance or clinics or both, was in 1988. So just like a year after I had moved to New York, there was a band director who was no longer there, but at this school in Winnetka, Illinois, New Trier High School. and he had a jazz festival, and he would bring people in to perform and everything. So he knew of my work with Woody Herman, so he brought me in. He commissioned me to write a chart, and I figured this would be a good time to just test the waters. And so I just started cold calling band directors in and around the area within a 3-hour drive. And I had no sponsor. A lot of the schools didn't have a lot of money, but I thought this is a chance where I could kind of figure out what it is I need to do. And so I hit, I don't know, maybe 3 schools in Illinois and another 3 or 4 in Iowa with a rental car, and a couple times driving almost through the night, getting like 3 hours of sleep, and then going to a high school and doing that. But I learned a lot about, matter of fact, there was one school I did where I was so used to the clinics we did with Woody Herman, where, it was wide-eyed kids and they had all these questions. And I went to this one school and nobody asked any questions. They're just sitting there, and I kind of was hemming and hawing. I told my story a little bit, and then it was like, any questions? And so the band director comes up to me after. This was at a college, actually, and he said, you should probably have some stuff prepared to say if nobody asks questions. And I thought that's a good idea. So I started just kind of thinking about things during my 5-hour car ride or whatever it was, of just things I could talk about, topics, bullet points, all those types of things, and slowly started getting that going. But that was the first time I did that, and I didn't come home with a lot of money, but the first gig paid enough to kind of even things out. But then my music started getting published, and that helped, me touring as a soloist and things like that, which got me involved with instrument companies. So I could have a sponsor and all those types of things. But in general, I'm just kind of, I'm not really cold calling people anymore, because I've met tons of people over the course of my 35 plus years doing it. But, if I'm going to be in an area, I look at that area and think, there's, how far can I go? How far will the anchor gig allow me? How close can I be, or how far do I need to be to not confuse their clientele? So it just kind of became a big math problem, and you look at the map and you look at what's there, and I've played clubs everywhere. I always try to include at least 1 or 2 clubs if I'm out playing. So if I'm performing a concert with a school group, or even with a professional group with a big band, that's great, and I get to solo and I get to play my music. But I really like to play in a small group because, it's well, you have a kid, right? So if you stay at home too long talking to your kid, you forget how to talk to adults. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So if you're constantly musically conversing with people that are beginners or intermediate improvisers, you kind of lose your edge a little bit, and your vocabulary suffers. So you have to kind of get out there and get out in the wild and play with people all over the country, all over the world. And that helps me to play better too, because each situation is different. You kind of have to learn how to communicate. You have to learn how to assess the language each person's using. And it just becomes like, you get thrown in a room with 3 people to have a conversation that you've never met before. You find common ground, right, and you make it work. So I learn a lot doing that. So I always throw in jazz clubs as well. But it's just like a big math problem. A lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. Not as many phone calls now, but some people just refuse to communicate via email. But now, sometimes I'll go places, like maybe 50 emails exchange, and I've never spoken to the person, and I meet them for the first time at the event. So,
wow,
yeah, it's just that's the gig. Playing, they get for free. It's all the
What's the that's a Phil Wilson quote?
Phil Woods.
Phil Woods.
Yeah.
Phil Woods. It's they're not paying me to play, they're paying me to get to the gig.
There you go. Yeah, that's really profound, because the hard part is the getting the gig, is the 2 hours on stage is actually not that hard. I mean, because
Right.
it's like we all prepare for however many years now. It's like that's the fun part. It's all before and after. Oh, that's great.
Sure.
Wait, all right. If I put on my that was amazing, and thank you, Jennifer, for getting them down that path. That was awesome. That's why you're here. The what I what I just if I put on my music business coaching hat, what I just heard was two things. One was like how intentional you are about all of this, where you first started trying to plan your first tour so that you could learn what you needed to do, which like that's very different than okay, tell me what to do and then I'll learn how to do it. It's like you first got to learn what you need to learn and then you need to learn the thing.
It's like throwing a kid in the pool,
right?
Without swimming lessons,
Yes.
I don't recommend throwing
that
a
takes
kid
a lot
in the
of
pool. Please put that on the bottom of this. Please, no children were thrown in pools.
The main difference is that if you don't end up getting any gigs, like no children drown. But yes, but it's still no. But you're right. And then and then the other thing is I love how I think genuinely matter of fact you are about. Well, then I figured out this, and then I figured out okay within this radius, and then I figured out that it can't be too close to my gig or else it's going to be but you knew absolutely none of that before you started this the first time, and then you go like, oh yeah, it's probably not the best that I booked something 45 minutes down the road, and you figure out how far is too far, but you learn by doing. That's the other headline, is rather than thinking about it.
The big part of the equation was I'm kind of an introvert, so becoming a public speaker and throwing myself out there and sharing things was not necessarily something that was my strong suit. So that also had to kind of come with time as well.
Wow. That's really amazing. And I think I'm not an introvert, and you probably not noticed this, but your wife is not one either. But I'm told anyway. At least she's not on Zoom calls. I can tell you that much. But I got to think that this is an empowering message for some introverts, especially younger ones who are listening to this, where it's just like, you can do it. You can do anything.
But it's kind of the same thing as improvising jazz. When I was younger, I was like terrified, but I wanted to do it so much. I just kept throwing myself out there. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I got with it. And learning how to communicate in that language helped me to kind of break the barrier of communicating just with the English language.
How so?
Realizing different perspectives. It's not like a cut and dried thing where your solo is your solo. It's more like a conversation. You have to listen to the folks around you and take in the information, or if there's no questions, be able to kind of assess the participants in the room to see what their areas of interest are, and then you can kind of better tailor it to the room, the specific room, rather than just stamp it out kind of a clinic. I've had people say, "What's your topic today?" And it's not really a topic. I want to do what's best for the students in the room. So once I figured those types of things out musically, it kind of helped me to kind of translate it. It's not like most people when they first start soloing, they think it's all about them, but it's really about the communication of the group. And the more you kind of bend to that, you can apply that to other situations.
I think that's interesting as somebody that started improvising a little bit later than John, but because I feel like even to get to that point, you have to have so much experience under your belt when everybody's operating on this other level, you can do a lot and say a lot and still not communicate. And you can kind of tell when people are just playing a zillion notes and not communicating with the band, even at my level. And then we've had a zillion talks about this, and I'm sure you talk about it with your students about leaving space. That's something people talk about with Miles Davis. He left space, there was room for people to interact with you. And what is this is sort of off the topic, but when you talk about your audience and sort of figuring out what they're into and and the band, figuring out how to interact with them. What is your concept of space in your playing?
Well, the first thing was embracing what it is I feel musically and not wavering from it. I mean, I can do a lot of different things and I can play in a lot of different styles and I can sound like a lot of different people's approaches, but it's not really me. So there was a point in my career where I had to decide, okay, this is what feels right for me. And if it doesn't work for a situation, I won't put myself in that situation, or, I can still demonstrate those types of things, but I prefer not to do that. And why would I want to do something with my life that I don't prefer to do? So I'm trying to do what I can to be the most honest with my personality. And I tell students all the time that the more you can relate your music to your personality, the more special you're going to be as a musician. The best musicians in the world all have a very unique voice. And to be a poor imitation of one of those is not really revered in the world of jazz. It's about being unique.
Yeah.
So once I figured out that the way I feel music and the way I am as a person they kind of go hand in hand, then I don't have to overstep and try and do something that doesn't fit. So that took a minute to just kind of coalesce the whole idea of that, and to realize that maybe that gig's not for me, or maybe I don't want to play with so-and-so's group because it calls upon me to do something that's more generic, and I'd rather be more personalized. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of...
I think one of the greatest things you ever told me was that if I could play something beautiful, it's valid, and it doesn't matter how many notes it is. It doesn't matter how intricately, how much technique I'm using. But that was something that's always spoken to me. And I mean, one of my favorite things to listen to you do is play ballads. I mean, it just sounds like you're, pardon my French, you're making love to the music. When you're playing a ballad, it just... earmuffs. But it does. It's just one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard done on trombone. And you talking about how it's personalized, and I talk with my students about stylizing sound, and it's something that I don't feel like is as embraced in the classical world. And I'm actually working with a student right now talking about the stylization of sound, because I feel like I have kind of a generic sound. I mean, I think it's nice, but you are one of the people that I go to, and I use it as an example of, like, you play a certain way when you're playing lead trombone, and it's like, it's out front, it's present, and then when you go to improvise, it's you internally. So like playing lead trombone, you're playing a role, and then when you improvise, that's John Fedchock. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's kind of like having an alter ego in a way. Lead trombone, especially when you're playing other people's music, you're trying to reflect what they have written accurately. And same with my own writing. But in general, when I'm called upon to play something myself, I really try to think about, I guess, immersing myself in the sounds of the song and the harmony of the song, whatever, and trying to think, for lack of a better term, poetically about what I play. So, and I tell students all the time, the important thing about when you're playing is you have to listen to yourself. If you don't listen to yourself, your solo is just going to be a rambling on long sentence. But if you listen
talking about me, I'm right here.
But if you play an idea and listen to yourself, you'll logically know what's supposed to come next. Whether you play it accurately or not, nobody's going to really know. But at least it's going to make sense. One thing leads to the next. I try to tell students that it's like writing a paragraph in English class. The first sentence is the subject of the paragraph, and everything else in the paragraph is about that first sentence. So you could think of that as in choruses, you could think of it in phrases, whatever, but there has to be some kind of organization for it to... Every good piece of music has these kind of sequential ideas. I would guess that almost every piece of music that makes sense has some kind of sequential thought process to it. So why not apply that to improvisation, organizing your thoughts that way? And I think that has helped me a lot too. Being
Wow.
able to listen to myself and expound on what I just heard. And if I didn't like it, make it a little bit better. Or if I did like it, how do I want to play the same notes in a different order? Do I want to play same notes, different rhythm? Do I want to play the same contour, different notes? Those types of things. And just kind of stretch it like silly putty when I, have the opportunity.
That's powerful what you just said, which is that I didn't like this, but that doesn't mean that it's not binary. It's not bad or good. It's like, did I play too many notes? Did I play the exact right number of notes, but they were too loud or too soft or too there's just, you can pull any of the strings and you might be right around the corner. Bad or I didn't like it, and magic can be like right next to each other. And
yeah, so I always try to stay, at least while I'm playing, I'm just thinking about one note at a time, moving on this path. Of course, when I'm done soloing, I might retroactively think about what I did or did not like, which
Go down the shame spiral?
well, yeah, or just kind of assess everything I'm playing, maybe a little more than people would recognize that are in the audience. But I think when I do that, it does help me to avoid those problems later.
Can you talk about the percentage of soloing that you do that you actually like?
In the moment, most of it, but afterwards, maybe 50%.
that's just because he's drunk on all the gigs.
Yeah.
But then he sobers up. Wow, that's
But
fascinating.
I'm also one that I don't like to post a lot of stuff of me playing because even though some of it's pretty good, I just there's something in there that bothers me a little bit. Maybe with time it won't bother me as much, and then I'll put it up later or something like that.
Wow.
Just a little overly self-critical sometimes.
Yeah, I when I was filling out the show notes before I hopped on with Jennifer to map this out, I just I went on YouTube and I just threw some random stuff on, and I've seen you play live and I've heard you play plenty, but the track that I put on was actually from New Trier High School,
Okay.
and it was your big band doing Caravan. And it was
Okay.
your arrangement, and I was this is like, as this is I'm not saying you should be honored, but this is like a super high compliment from me, which is that in your solo, first of all, it didn't start this way, but by the end you were playing a lot of notes and doing really impressive things technically on the trombone, both just thinking it up but also executing it. But like none of it sounded like you were attempting to make sure everybody in the room knew how good you are at operating a trombone. And it was just
Oh,
kind of, like just because, we all know those players who can do
yeah.
things that maybe some of us can't do. And then you go like, and that to me can be impressive for like, 30 seconds, maybe if it's really good, like a couple minutes. And then I'm like, okay. But,
Yeah.
and the same thing is that the arrangement also was in some ways was a little bit complex. It was like, if I remember correctly, like when it came around the end of the form, like the last two bars instead of like were like actually 4 bars in double time, and then it went
Uh-huh.
back, and then there was one of those where it switched to double time and then it just stayed, and it was like, but it also didn't feel like an arrangement that was just like trying to show how much you could jam into an arrangement. Just
Yeah.
all the solo, the arrangement, it all felt really organic. And that's not a question, which is bad interviewing, but it was awesome. Like on just so
No,
many
thanks.
on letting it wash over me, which is the most important level to me, but also like analyzing the writing, the soloing, like all of it. It was just, the more I dug, the more impressed I was.
Well, that's the advantage. That's the advantage of writing for yourself, is that I try to write in the pacing that I would want to use as a soloist playing in a small group.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of part of the reasoning of that too.
Okay.
That I can start out easier. I don't have to start out big and flashy. I can start out short ideas, whatever, and let it build over time. And then allow the arrangement energy to take me to the proper place rather than vice versa.
So you're
It's
playing
all smoke
chess.
and mirrors to me.
Well, now I'm not even that impressed anymore. It's like I set myself up for success, tuba boy. It tricked you. I fooled another one. I want to take just a minute to thank the Mary Papert School of Music at Duquesne University, in particular, Jim Nova, who is another wonderful trombone player. And I've had Jim co-host with me, but Jennifer's a lot better, so I'm probably not going to have Jim anymore. But I'm just kidding. Jim's already lined up for another one, which is going to be great. But the Mary Papert School of Music is a fantastic school. They have been a supporter of the Brass Junkies for a long time. And I would not be saying that they wouldn't be a sponsor if they weren't a fantastic school. But the brass faculty is incredible, and I love to make fun of Jim, but he's a phenomenal musician, teacher, and human. And James Gourlay, like the whole faculty is really, really fantastic. So if you
Jim's
would like
okay.
yeah, I mean, he's he's another one of these guys who can't arrange very well and can't play very well and can't teach very well, just like your husband. So yeah.
If you like music and people, I guess he's fine.
Yeah. if you'd like to learn more, there is a link in the show notes that he made a video. He put on like a nice shirt and everything for a video for Brass Junkies listeners. So if you are looking to go to undergrad or graduate school, please consider them as well. So let's see here. John, what trombone players, and don't say your wife, even though that could be like a legitimate answer. Other than your wife, what trombone players do you, I was going to say look up to, but like, who do you admire in the trombone world? It could be the same stuff that you play or completely different.
Well, I mean, all my heroes from the past, of course. I still listen to their music. Herbie Green.
In fact, we just got some records. Actually,
yeah, we did.
We went record shopping in New Orleans.
Oh, cool.
And there's a great used record shop in Columbus, Ohio. I just got a bunch of stuff from them, too. But Herbie Green was my first big influence, and he still, lives in me and my sound or whatever. Carl Fontana, J.J. Johnson, Curtis Fuller, Frank Rossellino. I also like Benny Green. He was a big influence on me. But as far as the folks that are still living, I think all those folks are gone. But of course, the people that are still living. Steve Davis is a great player. Paul McKee. I don't know if you know Paul McKee's playing. He teaches out at UC Boulder. Fantastic player.
And if you ever get a chance to see him and John play together, it's cute, and I mean that. I mean, it's hard for me to say that two grown-ass men are cute, but it's very adorable how they work together.
Well, we played together on Woody Herman's band for 3 or 4 years, and we just have we just get along really well. We're really good friends, and our approaches kind of fit together really well. We just worked a couple months ago with John Allred, who's a fantastic jazz trombonist.
Yeah.
Really love his playing. And then of the younger guys, since I'm so far I've only talked about people 60 and older. But Steve Davis is a great player. Marshall Jokes is tearing it up in town here. Let me see, who else am I forgetting? There's a ton of people. Mike Deese is a great player. There's a lot of really fantastic players that are not only out there playing, but also teaching and kind of starting a whole new crop of people in their image, I guess you could say, which is cool. When I was in college, other than Bill Watrous, nobody was touring around and nobody was recording. Carl Fontana didn't record his first album until I was already in New York City. Huh. So he was a sideman. If you wanted to find out how he played, you had to go dig around and find stuff, and you had to be pretty, looking in record stores, used record stores, just to find stuff like that. So there weren't a lot of people out there influencing jazz trombonists. So when I moved to New York, there really was only like 3 or 4 of us that moved to New York around that time that were really pursuing being jazz trombonists, just because there weren't a lot of folks doing it. It was me and Conrad, and of course, shortly before I moved to New York, Steve Teray. These guys are all great players too. But there weren't a lot of folks recording. And so when I recorded my first album in 1992, it came out in 95, but that's 30 years ago. About 10 years later, we started seeing people. I started seeing people come and say, "You were a big influence. You know, your albums were a big influence. You know, and they're really good jazz trombone players." And it's same with Conrad. So, I think it's cool now that there's so many trombone players recording that it's going to inspire a lot of younger people to pursue that. And not only are they recording, but they're taking teaching jobs too. So they're full time, you know, hands on with a lot of folks. So it's really good for the instrument.
Yeah, Mike's program at Michigan State is pretty awesome. He's doing a lot of good things there.
Yeah.
Wow, that's that's awesome. One thing that is a heck of a lot easier now than it was at any other time in history is that when you know, like if there's a jazz record, just the other day I saw somebody mention Art Pepper Plus 11, which I'm sure is a, you know, an album that you know, because it's you know, it's like, it's lauded. It was new to me. There's a lot of jazz that I know a lot about, and then there's like it's actually kind of exciting that there's like some really massive stuff that I have never heard of or heard before.
Yeah.
And I noticed that the drummer was ridiculous. And I then like fired up Wikipedia, and then I see that it's Mel Lewis, which was a name that I wasn't familiar with. And then I like, you know, and I pulled the string, and then I'm like, and suddenly I can just go down like this rabbit hole for like 4 straight weeks of not sleeping, of just like studying Mel Lewis. And it's like, it used to be a lot harder to figure out who was playing and then to go. And now it's like, boy, your curiosity can just steer you.
Well, and that's the one thing that I know. Jazz in schools is important, and they're doing great work. But the one thing is, there's all these musicians, but there's only time enough to study a handful of masters. Mm-hmm. And with YouTube, unless you're really industrious and go into, or MP3s, you don't know who the side men are or side women.
Right.
So
Thank you.
So, but when I was younger, when I was younger, the whole experience was buying the album, sitting on the couch with the record cover, reading the liner notes, reading the personnel, and then if somebody struck you, you'd say, "Who's that trumpet player?" And you'd read that, and then you go buy their album, and then you'd, like you said, you go down the rabbit hole. But with MP3s, I've had students come in and like J.J. Johnson recording, and oh, that's great. Do you know who that drummer is? No. You know, it's Elvin Jones.
Do you find there's curiosity there?
They think it's interesting, but it's not like a light bulb goes off. But I try to get the light bulb to turn on. Say, you know, if you do a little research, or if you don't try to download this stuff for free, and you might get some information from the liner notes or something. You know, that's how I learned, and that's what I tell students is, something may not connect with you when you listen to Dizzy Gillespie. But if you listen to Art Farmer or Chet Baker, something might click. But if you don't know about them because you're just studying Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, you know, and so on, Freddie Hubbard, you know, all those types of things, you know, the main driving force of each particular style, you're not going to catch, you know, if Coltrane doesn't do it for you, you're never going to discover Stan Getz. So if Stan Getz does something to you, then you kind of follow that path, and you can get closer to what your personality feels, and you get closer to what you want to emulate as a musician. Wow. Because if you try to do something that's not in your emotional wheelhouse, it's going to sound dishonest when you try to do it.
Wow, that's profound. I keep saying that, but you keep saying profound things. That's like, yeah. I asked a question before where I just like said something for 2 minutes and then stopped talking, which is not a good interviewing. And then I just keep being like, "That's profound." Yeah, it's like
He says other profound things at home too, like there's no jazz in space. I'm going to just say them out of context because they're very profound.
It's like, wow, be thinking about that the rest of the day. Thanks. Yeah, like how about that?
There's space in jazz.
There's that. let's pretend that this was intentional, because this was a question I wanted to ask before and I just didn't have the opening. Space is really hard to in all of us started soloing, or it's just like da 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 da, right? And then you just like you stop to breathe and that's it. How do you teach students to add space to their soloing?
It's usually in context of playing with a group, which means you kind of have to mechanically get it started. So you tell whoever the soloist is, when you get to a certain spot, I need you to leave at least 2 or 3 beats open. And then you tell the rhythm section, whenever that is, try to do something in there. Either I'll tell the piano player or the drummer or the bass player, try to do something to play off of what they did. Cool. So the student can kind of feel the conversation a little bit. And then I'll tell the student, okay, now I want your next line in your solo to kind of respond to what they did. So you're trying to get your ears to open up a little bit, take the blinders off a little bit. But it's hard, and it's even harder with instruments that don't require breathing.
Right.
I've had bass players, I'll say, okay, when you solo, I want you to hold your breath. When you have to take a breath, stop playing. Because they'll just keep, because bass players are used to doing that. They're used to playing every beat.
Right.
They're walking, whatever it is they're playing all the time. So they get used to that feeling of not stopping.
Right. Wow. That's great. Hold your breath. I love it. No, that's.
Do you ever have someone fall over?
No.
J.D. Shaw used to say the tuba would basically never stop in Boston brass arrangements, and he one day very lovingly told me that was because if I was playing that I couldn't be talking. So yeah, and that I wasn't always being unhelpful, but I was never being unhelpful when my lips were buzzing into the metal cup. So he just made sure that happened basically all the time. I was like,
maybe that's why bass players keep playing, because they don't want to hear the conversations while they're soloing.
Yeah, exactly.
So mean.
How did the two of you meet?
I was playing a gig at the Blue Note was releasing it was a record release for my
2007.
My 4th CD with my big band. And
he was trying to remember which number album it was, and you were like, 2007. He doesn't remember the year. He wasn't even trying to remember.
I remember the year. I'm trying to then remember the name of the.
I was giving you some credit there, John. Yeah, she's jumping on you for no reason.
Just before the gig, I was playing a recording date with a friend of mine, Don Downs, who played lead trumpet on Woody Herman's band before moving to New York.
Okay.
And I asked him what he was doing.
I was playing a show with him.
Yeah, I asked him what he was doing. He said he was playing this show, Curtains, and I didn't know what the show was. And I said, who's playing in the show? And he mentioned Charlie Gordon, the tenor trombone player, and Jen on bass trombone. And I said, I don't know her. Is she a good player? And he said, yeah. And I said, is she cute? And he said, yeah. I said, well, then hook me up. I was kind of joking, but he said, I will. So he told her, he told Jen, you should go to the Blue Note and hear this band. And she was thinking it was maybe...
No, I was already going.
That's right. She was already going to go.
I was already going.
But she thought, because Don said, make sure you introduce yourself to John, whatever. And Jen's thinking, why introduce myself to John? Shouldn't I introduce myself to George Flynn, the bass trombone player?
No, I already knew George. That's why I was going.
Yeah, so she was confused why he was saying to introduce herself to me.
No, I thought I was going to get work out of this.
Yeah, okay. So
how'd that work out for you?
She came, I believe you came for the second set, right? And when the set was over, I was tearing down, and I knew that she was going to be there because Don told me. So she came up to the band just as we finished and told us that we didn't suck. And then
no, I told you specifically that you didn't suck at all.
I thought you said you guys didn't suck at all. I thought you said that to the section.
Oh, well, you have a better memory than
you were standing over by George. Anyway.
I love the two versions of this story. I feel like I should have separated you, put you in different cop cars, and like, all right, tell them, then see how much overlap there is.
So by the time we're finished, I'm starting to tear down a little bit, and she was still there, so I went up to talk to her for maybe 10 minutes, maybe.
Which is a lot considering you're an introvert, yeah.
Yeah, and so, but she said she had to get back because she had to walk her dog. And so, I don't know how many...
Yeah, I moved the day before. I literally was 2 weeks out of a relationship when I met John.
So maybe a couple weeks later, I just sent her an email, said thanks for coming, whatever. Hope, and I mentioned her dog by name.
There you go.
And then I said, maybe would you want to get together? I just asked her in the email, and then she looked at it and realized what was going on. And I'm a little older than her, so her and her friend, Ein Inserto, Googled me to find out how much. And then Jen called her mom and told her this old man's hitting on her. And her mom said, just go have a good time, because she had just gotten out of a relationship. And
4.5-year relationship.
Yeah.
But we found out that you had the same birthday as the guy that I just got out of the relationship.
Not the same year, but the day, yeah.
Yeah, I almost was like, nah. I was like, that's got to be a bad sign. But it just turns out I had the right date, just the wrong dude.
John, that's a power move, remembering the dog's name and then dropping that 2 weeks later. That's
sealed the deal, man.
That's a power move right there. Yeah, see, that's his networking, intentional.
And the first time I met the dog, it humped my leg, so that was it.
It did. And he humped your mom's leg as well. And we bought our house for that dog, so we live in a giant dog house now.
Yeah, I was living in a no pets building. Jen actually gave up the dog for 1.5 years almost, with just stay with friends and family, until we got married and bought the house.
Wow. Yeah. And do you all live in the city?
We're in Astoria, Queens.
Queens. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that was like an annoyingly romantic story.
Oh my God. If you really want to be, if you want to just cringe, there's a New York Times.
If you want to see a sappy, overly saccharine story about us, the New York Times did a video interview of us.
Really? How did I miss this?
On their website, yeah.
Oh yeah,
wow.
It's like Video Vows, it's called, and it is. You will never see me act more like a girl than in this video. I know it's so bad. I'm so embarrassed, but it's also really cute.
Wow, I need to see New York Times, Jennifer. That's going to be fascinating. There you go. That's that reminds me of like my wife who's amazing. She when she talks about how like when we first met you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and like and I tell her that's because she was dating my representative at the time, like and it sounds like the New York Times interviewed Jennifer's representative. So yeah, that's
and it's kind of like that for us after we got married. Like when we first got married, I did this, and this. But that was my early marriage representative. Now she knows that I don't like to do this, and this. And yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah, you know how I go.
I don't know what he's talking about. He's perfect in every way.
Oh, gee, this is getting sickening. All right, moving along. I don't remember what the song was. It was "Drive" by the Cars. The like Cars ballad, the really famous one from the '80s. That's is like about like a breakup, and it's one of the best pop songs ever written. But my son was listening to this, and he was like, "This is like romantic, lovey music." He's like, "I don't like it."
Where's the part when someone gets murdered?
Yeah, right. I think that's.
We're back at Sweeney Todd.
Yes, we're back at Sweeney Todd. That's pretty funny. All right. Well, I want to hear about one other thing because. Jennifer when she and I were talking beforehand, she talked about the two of you and your different approaches to practice and practicing. And the words that she used was that she uses a fear-based approach to practicing and that you love the process. And
That's
so,
true.
John, can you talk a little bit about why do you love the process of practicing so much?
And also include how you feel, what you call when your mouth feels like it's forgotten where it goes on the mouthpiece.
Yeah, I can't take a lot of time off. I need to stay on it or it goes away. And it's harder to come back. But I like the process because I found many years ago that the more control I have over the instrument, the better I can express myself, even if I'm not playing jazz. Throughout the course of a week or two, because it's really about connecting this with this, So when I'm playing jazz, in general, I'm thinking of something and it comes out. Everything in between's been taken care of. That through the what I like to say is the Karate Kid. Paint the fence, wash the car, wax the car. All these repetitive things. If you do them enough, then when you want to play something that involves one of those, you don't even have to think about it. It just happens. So that's kind of why I like it. I like the solitude of long tones and playing lip slurs and all the technical things, because every little problem I encounter, I make a little exercise out of. So it's like you're practicing everything all at once, but only one thing. I don't know. I'm completely content sitting at home, just playing by myself if I have to, for weeks on end if I needed to. And
He loved the pandemic.
thank God during the pandemic, I didn't have to worry about that. But I still played every day. I still went through the motions of, whether I was, sometimes I'm more thoughtful about going through the motions, but sometimes it's just going through the motions and having it be like a routine or ritual every day that I do. Some people will get up in the morning and do calisthenics or whatever it is you want to call it. It's kind of something I like to just do every day. I feel better personally. I feel like I can, it feels like there's something missing if I don't do it. And
It's like trombone yoga.
I can tell when I'm off my game because I didn't attend to those technical things. Even when I'm just playing jazz, I can tell if something's missing due to not addressing it in my daily practice.
I love that you use all of the same things that I use when I'm doing maintenance work. You use the Roshu books, you do lip slurs, you do them crazy. It's bananas. If anyone ever gets a chance to hear John do his warm up, it's pretty impressive. And people
But no one's ever going to hear
him.
it. No one's ever going to hear it.
I know. He's always playing in a practice mute, but people have knocked on your door at schools and said, "That's amazing."
Yeah.
His warm up is pretty impressive. I can sing it to you, but it's
the second that happens is when I put in the practice mute.
yeah, I know.
Actually,
But-
Jennifer, the bonus episode, John, we don't need you. It's just going to be Jennifer singing your entire warm up. That's going to really drive the Patreon patrons. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
John, will you talk about how you use? Because I think there's a lot of mystery when it comes to jazz, and people will be shocked to know that you're using all the same stuff that classical musicians use for maintenance.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Because like I said, it's all about being able to control the instrument. The more control I have over it, the more I can express myself. But also not just technically speaking, but musically, like all these etudes, the Bordoni etudes, whatever Roshu, whatever you want to call them. It's like bebop. It's like learning a key center, relative minor, relative major, going to different secondary dominants, all that stuff. It's all in there. Enclosures. Like you play a chord, but on either side there's something. Half step on either side. It's all in there. It's all the same language. It's just the delivery that's different when you're playing jazz. And I think the more the people start to realize the correlation between those two, and I've tried to get students to what I call cross-train. If they're learning a tune in the key of E, I'll have them play an etude in the key of E just to get comfortable with the key centers and all that, and it really does help. So, and
I do that too.
I made a big jump when I was in college, just when I started playing all those etudes, just by learning how to own the key centers a little bit better. And then negotiate through them and feel how one major key is really the same as another minor key, and then a 2-5-1 is basically this in a major key, which is basically the same thing in the relative minor key. All those types of, once you start to develop all the correlations in your mind, if you think about it, then and that's what jazz players are supposed to be doing, thinking about it, not just reading it mindlessly. It all goes hand in hand.
I do like, too, the way that you have described, and maybe you could talk a little bit about it, about how the legato studies, it's basically jazz articulation.
Yeah, I mean, we live in legato on the trombone. So to get control of that, you have to do it a lot. And I try to tell students that when you're improvising, you're thinking more about what you're playing rather than how you're playing it. And you can hear everybody's technical errors, but if you're playing something where you're reading it and you can focus in on how you're playing it, and to focus in on a smooth legato and your slide technique and all those types of things, when you're under the control of, reading or playing even something memorized, where you can really focus in on those elements, then it's going to make your lines better. It's going to make your flow of your ideas better. All those types of things.
Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, that's really, really cool. Like hearing about assigning or yourself doing, like some Rochu in the key of E when you're learning changes in E, and then identifying secondary dominances, and it like forces you to like approach the same concept but from like a completely different angle, which is like, that's how you learn. That's great.
Yeah.
Did
it's all just music, I think that's the people, they think one is so different than the other. It's really just music and organized ideas and melodies that mean something.
Can you talk about what you started, and maybe we'll finish at some point with the Bordoni?
Oh, I wrote some accompaniments, like jazz chord accompaniments to some of the classical etudes that trombonists play all the time. And I had a student come up at the ITF a couple of years ago. I did a master class, and I brought up a student. I asked how many people were familiar with playing jazz and how many people had never played jazz before in their life. And I brought one of those students up, and I said, do you know the Rochu etudes? And I showed him the first one in the book. I said, do you know this? He says, oh yeah, I've played it a bunch. But I had a rhythm section there. And I said, okay, now I want you to play it with the rhythm section, and I want you to think about how you feel about this melody today, not how you felt about it yesterday or whatever. If you feel like it's got to flex a little, whatever. And he jumped a little off the page every once in a while, changed a rhythm or an inflection. And it was like that was his first foray into like taking liberties with something, which is how jazz started. People got bored playing the melody the same way over and over again, so they started embellishing it.
Wow. That's a gift to give to that student, and to do it under those circumstances, but just to see how it's, jazz can feel to classical players like it's like way out of reach, like it's up on something that you need some like you need a ladder truck to and how do you what are you gonna do, just like get a ladder? It's like, no, it's just like it's like 2 shelves up, like you can just grab a chair, or you can be 6'4" like me and just grab it, but it's like,
it's really all the same information. It's just about the articulations and all that, and those you can't get from a book. It's just from listening, imitating what you hear, but it's the same information.
Yeah. When my son is taking piano lessons, and he screws around with the melodies all the time, which is like awesome. I'm like being careful. I don't go out of my way to say that's cool, because I don't want him to stop, but I certainly don't correct it. And his teacher, who is I don't believe improvises at all, but she's smart enough to just kind of just let it be. And he just he'll add grace notes. He doesn't know what a grace note is. He just he adds grace notes. He just kind of messes with octaves, and it's just like we all start super creative, and then we just put ourselves, especially classical musicians, in these little tiny boxes where it's just all about execution, and that's it. And
I remember my first time I ever improvised. I was 9 years old. I wanted to play the trombone. I walked 9 years old. They took us all to a room with all the instruments, and I walked right to the trombone. I don't know if it's because it was weird looking or whatever, or if the director pushed me because I was one of the taller kids. But my parents said, "We'll buy the horn, but you're going to take lessons." And I said, "Great, and you're going to practice every day." Great. So there was one day I didn't want to practice, and my mom used to tell this story that a couple times brought her to tears because I just did not want to practice. But I started making up stuff that sounded like my lesson. I didn't want to practice my lesson, so I just started making up things that sounded, and my parents believed I was practicing. That was my first remembrance of improvising.
Wow.
Was you being a bad boy.
Yeah.
Like you were actually doing like really transformative, foundational work, and you thought you were just being a wise ass. That's That's like, there's layers to that. That's wonderful. Yeah. That's oh man, I could talk to you for hours. But yeah, I love the. It's obvious that you've thought about all of these topics like a lot. You're a very thoughtful player, which is obvious when you hear him play at all. You're a thoughtful writer. You're just a thoughtful musician. Jennifer won't shut up about how thoughtful of a husband you are.
He's a pretty good human if you like people.
You know, I mean, I don't like people, but he still seems like a good human. So yeah. John, this has been awesome. We are going to Jennifer and I are both going to have John hang out for the bonus episode where we're going to. One thing I want to ask you about there, because we're out of time here, is I want to ask you about how you got started with arranging. And then maybe if we might be able to get like a road story or two out of the Woody Band out of you would be, because we usually like sometimes it's content heavy and then sometimes it's a little bit lighter. You know, for the jazz for the jazz episode, no, for the bonus episode, you know, which will be it'll be improv. You can go to patreon.com/the Brass Junkies to learn how to support the Brass Junkies and to help this thing keep on going so that we can get more deep dives into people like John Fedchock. And Jennifer, you were awesome. This was like really great. I'm serious.
No, you're awesome.
I knew, I know, but so are you. So no, your questions were all I knew that you were going to be great. And because I was like, I need to interview John because you really have been on the list for years. And I was like, Jennifer. It's like it instantly hit me. It's like, of course that's the co-host, and she did not hesitate.
Lance?
Yeah, no, not me. I can tell you that much. Yeah, may he rest in peace. So, thank you, John. Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
And we will hang out for the bonus episode. And thank you all. And that's going to do it for another episode of the Brass Junkies.